try to make it very clear that this video isn't necessarily a roasting Jim Sterling video. In fact, I greatly respect the work that Jim has put in over the years and his stance on protecting consumers by and large. Now, there's been 2 recently pretty bad takes that he's had, but I would be willing to bet he thinks my takes are just as bad. Now, the first, of course, was by default endorsing Epic Games essentially because Steam had a game he didn't like on it. And the second was that gaming is inherently political and that if developers are somehow unwilling to make overt statements about specific political ideologies or political beliefs, that they are a coward, that they are centrist for money. Now, I took a lot of exception with this because the idea that Jim presents is very transparent. What he says out loud is the Division 2 isn't making a comment about the gun debate or something like that because it's in the video, and I'm mad about that. But what he really means is, I don't like the political statements you're making, and you're refusing to commit to them so I can be mad about it. Does that make sense? The idea that if a video game has some sort of political statement baked in, that everyone that plays it is too stupid to figure it out, and that we need the game developers to put a statement out there and put their tent pole or plant their flag in one side of a political debate or another. The reality is there is many, 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 many more sides to politics, and I find personally, if you try to be a centrist or center left or center right, these are far more productive positions to have. Because nothing is black and white. That is a low IQ argument. The argument that you would want video games whom have political statements, you want their developers out there dividing their fans is also insane. Look, I believe that most of the people that are upset about Division 2 and Far Cry 5, for example, not coming out and making overtly political statements, they're mad because they won't say what they want them to say, all right? That, in my opinion, is at the root of all of this. But in Jim Sterling's video, he appears to shame Ubisoft for not coming out and, quote, picking a side and saying that they're apolitical for money's sake, essentially. That's what the title of his video is. And to me, that seems awfully disingenuous. A video game publisher's job is to make money. Dividing your fandom up front by making divisive political statements is the opposite of what you do to make money. But let's take a look at a couple of these takes.
The Division 2 team has been twisting and squirming as it attempts to capitalise on political imagery while claiming to radiate no politics at all. And nowhere has the squirming been squirmier than in a by now notorious Polygon interview in which creative director Terry Spear came off as downright pitiful in his attempts to avoid admitting the obvious.
So you can tell by the words Jim is using, calling him pitiful, basically alluding to him being a coward for not coming out and saying that, you know, we're making these political statements. It's obviously viewed as a negative thing, but my question is, if it's in the game, if it's so obvious to Jim Sterling and everyone else who just wants politics in everything, who needs their hand held, right? If it's so obvious to you, what do you want then, right? If it's so plainly obvious to you what the political statement of a particular game is, what's the problem? You want the developer to come out and make press releases about it? Why? Do you think everybody's stupid?
The Division 2 begins with a cutscene which talks about the collapse of American civilization and makes a clearly definitive point that the people who had guns were the ones who survived the fall. Almost immediately, the game is flirting with gun debates.
Okay, so you understood the point. So the point was made and you understood it, and it sounds like you're stamping your feet because you can't have your far lefty journal buddies write angry articles about it? I don't understand. So you understood the point. If that is in fact the point that Division 2 is making, what else is there? I mean, later in your video, Jim, you also say, we have a president that won't disavow white supremacy. Well, why would you need him to do that? I don't understand. Is it about control? Why would you ever need anyone to come out there and say white supremacy is bad? Who needs that? Everybody knows that. It's like, are you mad that they're not indoctrinating young children? Is it bad? Are you mad that the game's developer and in the game they're not making more overt choices to tell the players of the game what to think?
The very backstory of The Division spins from a terrorist bioweapon attack that circulated via infected banknotes on Black Friday, American consumerism having been weaponized against itself. Now, if anyone from Ubisoft or Red Storm Entertainment can explain to me how that's not making any political statements, I'll explain to them how muscular, fit, and attractive I am.
Okay, so here again, Jim, you clearly understand what's part of this fictional story. Okay, you understand that in this fictional story, that's what happened. Just like basically every action film in the 90s. This is not really that unique of a story. Okay, but just because it exists in a fictional world of video games doesn't mean that developers need to do a world tour and pander to Polygon, Kotaku, and all these other outlets and tell them this is about Drumpf. Because that's what it seems like you want. That's what it seems like. Oh, we're going to look at all these articles too. All these articles that are mad that Ubisoft won't come out and divide their customers. I mean, are any of you ever, there's no way any of you could ever be business owners, right? None.
Many games, whether intentional or not, make political statements, and if you fail to commit to any, people will come up with them for you. There's a distinct subset of people who believe politics have no place in video games, an impossible belief due to how politics affects everything in life.
Yeah, you definitely don't want people making up their own minds. That would be the worst, because what you need to do as a video game developer of a fictional story is tell your users and your customers what to think, specifically on what political points of view they should have. Now, you also say that there's a certain subset of gamers that don't want politics in video games, and you use a reductive approach. You either don't understand what that movement means, one I would say I'm a part of, or you're purposely misrepresenting it. Look, we understand that Tom Clancy's is going to have elements of it that are political, right? It takes place in Washington, D.C., all this stuff, that's fine. We don't think that's political content. Where we don't like it is what you're asking for, is you're asking for the game to be making statements or telling people what to think. Nobody has a problem having elements of government in a video game. That doesn't mean the game is political, the fictional game. What people don't like is when you have a character in a video game that's like Orange Man Bad. And to be fair, you can have an Orange Man Bad character as long as you also have, the other side of that. Lock her up, something like that. You can have both sides even. Now, I would prefer you have neither. When you take elements of modern politics and inject it into your game, people don't like that. People don't like being told what to think. People don't like having the video game they're playing make them feel bad. Now, you may disagree with this, Jim, and that's entirely your right. And you are not alone in believing these things. But to me, it's disingenuous to say something like, well, politics are in everything, so therefore you're not being fair when you ask us to not talk about it. We don't care if something happens in a government building or there's a national incident or something like that. We don't want our video games telling us what to think or shaming us or pushing an ideology. That is what politics in video games is about. Not having like a government worker in them, which is how you present it. I mean, and when we look at how this video is going over, I would say that, it's probably pretty good for you. Probably getting a lot of retweets from verified journals. But also, I'd say a good amount of your fans, at almost 2,000 dislikes, are not a fan of this. And you're losing a few subscribers. Not many, but still, you know, a couple hundred probably going to abandon ship by the end of the day. And that shouldn't stop you, Jim, from sharing your opinion. It is, after all, your opinion, something you're 100% entitled to. And I will reiterate, this is nothing personal. This is not a attack on Jim Sterling. This is pointing out that there is a group of people that write articles that demand video games not just make political statements, but make the right ones. Okay? People are mad about The Division 2 not talking about the undertones that it has because they want to disagree with them. Or they want to have a take because they don't really have anything of use to say about a video game if it's not political. If you work at Polygon or Kotaku, you'll see somebody like Heather Alexandria, whom only ever writes about social justice issues. And you see, you know, people, Charlie Hall is generally pretty good. But again, Tom Clancy's 2 is, quote, not making any political statements. And they'll say a game about the next Civil War refuses to take a side. What's wrong with that? What's wrong with letting your work show? What's wrong with letting your work speak, do the talking for you? Why do you need some dude in a suit, actually some young hipster in $12 glasses, to come out and tell people what to think? What does this mean for you? I mean, it's like, who cares about modern day politics in video games? Nobody. Nobody is sitting there who isn't a pundit or a far left ideologue. Nobody is spending $60 on a game and angry that it's not making fun of Donald Trump. Nobody is spending $60 on a video game and angry because it's not making fun of Hillary Clinton. That's not how gaming works, right? It is political despite what developers say. Again, this is a trap. This is low IQ, low level arguments. So what they're saying is, gotcha, because there are political elements in it. Well, of course there are. All right. It takes place in Washington, D.C. What you're mad about is either you can't publicly disagree with their take because they won't give you one. Right. If you want to get particular, all right, if you really want to look into this, yeah, I'm pretty sure those whom choose to arm themselves in a state of civil war would have a better chance. Why do you need somebody to spell that out to you? I mean, it's an amendment for a reason in the United States. But again, that's not what this game is about. This game is not trying to tell you what to think, and that angers them because it's all about control and censorship with the far left. Look at these articles. Insisting The Division 2 is apolitical while marketing it with overtly political messages. Some grade A BS. Wah, 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 wah. They're only mad because the developer won't come out and say something for them to spaz out about. We're definitely not making any political statements, right? I mean, they literally said, I mean, the game is about a fictional government, all right? This tweet was not smart. Probably not smart, which they had to then redact. In the end, we'll likely get a product that says things by complete accident because the Washington Monument looks cool in screenshots. Grab a portable heater and position it so it blows directly into your face for the optimal experience. I mean, who cares, right? They are so butthurt that these games aren't making political statements. Everybody, for an apolitical game, The Division sure likes to reference politics and marketing. They are so angry. You even have the New Yorker, which is a total joke. The Division 2 and the severing of politics from video games. Again, now this covers everything with, everything that happened with the tweets that were had to be retracted and apologized for. And of course, you've got to write about Gamergate because, normies see Gamergate and they click on it. The rest of us know that's been over for years. And these tensions are not unique to video games. In 2016, one of the writers of Rogue, a Star Wars story, tweeted that the Galactic Empire represented a white supremacist organization. I mean, the people force this because they don't have anything interesting to say about the actual video game or the gameplay, right? So they co-opt The Division 2. They co-opt Far Cry 5. I mean, anybody who played Far Cry 5 knows cults are not great. Anybody who's watched a documentary on the People's Church or Jim Jones knows cults are not great. But you know what another cult is? The cult of SJW identitarianism. It's a cult of control. A cult that promotes censorious behavior. A cult that wants to tell you what to think. If you break it down, most of these people are members of the same cult, wanting the same things. That is more scary than anything. I want people to think freely, to have the option to just be able to turn it off and play a video game without having to analyze the deep and current modern day political meanings, references in the game. Most people, 99% of people that play video games are never looking for that. It's people that are paid to write. Now, if they could write about video games, they would. But they only know how to write about politics. So they abuse video games and movies to do so. Now, I'm definitely more inclined to play The Division 2 after all of this. I don't know about you, but I think we need more, not less, game developers coming out and refusing to capitulate to the far left mob that wants them to make political statements and just make good video games. I hope you enjoyed this video. We'll talk to you again real soon.